relative experience in some cases.
Well, let me ask the one native Newporter, explain that. Why this reluctance to go away? Or to stay away, I should say.
Well, I mean, it's obviously, people are very much tied to what I think is the very best of Newport, the fact that our history and our heritage, access to the waterfront, access to wonderful assets around the waterfront. But I want to offer what I think two of the worst decisions that were ever made in the last 50 years that I think have impacted Newport in the most negative circumstance. And this is my opinion. People can agree and I can open up debate, but the number one terrible decision was America's Cup Boulevard. America's Cup Boulevard, which was, you know, at the tail end of the suburbanization of America and the federal highway programs of the 50s and 60s, the goal was to dump more cars into Newport, particularly post the naval fleet leaving in the early 70s. But the challenge is that America's Cup is a highway, and we have dissected a historic waterfront from a historic neighborhood and community. And to this day, most of the visitors that come to our community have no idea that our town center, one of the most historic town centers in America, is Washington Square. It doesn't exist to them. So what you have instead is most visitors come and they see Bowens and Bannister's Wharf, wonderful restoration. Or they look at Queen Anne Square, which was created on behalf of Queen Elizabeth in 1976 and her arrival here. But those are not authentic town centers. And here where we are in the Jane Pickens, the Opera House, all the assets that we have are hidden. This jewel of Newport is hidden from most visitors. So America's Cup Boulevard was a tragic mistake that separated our working waterfront, largely, and our historic communities and neighborhoods.
So that's the number one.
The second, and this is going to be controversial for some, but this is what I believe. The second great mistake we made in the 70s and 80s was to allow so much residential living on our working waterfront. People living on a waterfront. Because someone who lives on a waterfront as a primary residence has a value system and has an interpretation of quality of life that's different from a man or woman who depends upon working on a waterfront as a commercial fisherman, or as a boat builder, or as a carpenter. So because of that decision, we have a waterfront that is working in name only. We do not have a working waterfront. We have a waterfront that is largely a residential lifestyle community. And because of that, we've lost dozens and dozens of working class, marine-related jobs and industries over the years. In fact, Eastern Ice left last year for Fall River. We have several companies to this day that are struggling with the fact that with the quality of the cost of taxes, the difficulty of access, and the difficulty of running their business, they might have to leave our community, our working waterfront. In fact, most of the most successful boat building companies in this state, in Melville and Portsmouth, all began in Newport. So I think the tragic mistake of allowing so much residential living within the waterfront created a conflict that eventually led to the demise of a true working waterfront, which is related to working class jobs. I mean, when I was a kid, my mom worked at General Electric wiring houses, which is now the Perry Mill. That was a working place. I had lots of great friends, Irish friends, Greek friends, Italian friends, whose families ran restaurants on the waterfront. They were in the fishing industry. They were involved in a number of the machining and original equipment manufacturing along Thames Street. And those were working jobs that supported a working community. Those jobs went away, and so did the middle class and working class with it. So those were the two tragedies that I think we need to somehow reclaim. We need to reclaim our waterfront, and we need to reclaim more of a mixed working base within our community.
Well, let's pick up on a couple of those points. I just want to send out this reminder to our listeners at home. I'm Anthony Brooks, and you're listening to a town meeting from the Jane Pickens Theater in Newport. This is part of WRNI's Newport 1 Square Mile reporting series. With us tonight are the citizens of Newport, as well as Newport Mayor Jean Marie Napolitano, Keith Stokes of the Newport County Chamber of Commerce, Amanda Fry-Lanos of the Martin Luther King Community Center, Jim Gillis of the Newport News, and WRNI's own Scott McKay, who's been uncharacteristically quiet to this point. Scott, chime in on this challenge facing
One thing,
Newport.
and Keith, I think it's really fascinating, are mixed, and this is going on in Providence now too, they're having a similar debate, that mixed-use waterfronts inherently chase away business. That you just can't have a mixed-use waterfront because once people start living there, they start voting, and then people have to, you know, be mindful of what they do. and they boost the cost and the rents up. And pretty soon you get a gentrified situation, and the folks who, you know, unload the ships and do the port and repair the ships, that they can't afford anymore to do business in that kind of area. Do you think that's a problem?
Absolutely. I testified on behalf of the Providence Working Waterfront Alliance, pleading with the legislature, please don't make the mistake we made in Newport. You have vibrant, industrial, marine-dependent working businesses along Allen's Avenue, and there's nowhere for them to go. And those are working jobs. Those are not people who are going to be engineers, or they're not going to be technicians. They're not going to be working for Fidelities and the G-Techs. These are working people, people who work with their hands.
Right.
And this is one of the few locations left in this state that people can work with their hands and have a sustainable income.
On the other hand, something that you did well, and I'm fascinated by Newport. Maybe the mayor can chime in here too. I know Keith knows a lot about it, but I am still fascinated by a city that basically lost its lifeblood. And today, as people look back, I know people who lived in Newport a long time, they will tell you, a lot of people will say that Newport is actually a better city now with the kind of academic and high-tech Navy that's left than it was when the fleet's here. I know some people dispute that, and you know, they like the authenticity, maybe the grittiness of the Navy, but I just really have to say that Newport did do some things well and did reinvent itself after the economy took this devastating blow.
Let's bring the mayor into this conversation.
Yeah,
I'm interested to this point, and that is the city government sort of focusing on what Keith Stokes is talking about?
Well, I'm not sure that we can focus a lot of places, and I want to give you an example of something that Keith is talking about and Scott's talking about. Timeshares, condominiums on the waterfront are there by exception. A few years ago, and I think Keith will remember this, we had some complaints, and it was a waterfront bar. And the woman gets up and she says, "Oh, I used to go there all the time." And I said, "What changed?" She said, "Oh, we have our 4-year-old daughter. We bring her down for the weekend," which is why she was complaining. So what Keith is talking about, you know, having these upscale condominiums and timeshares there by exception, and having a working waterfront isn't really compatible. And we have that problem quite a bit.
So what's the solution? What's the solution?
I'm not sure what the solution is for Newport, because we already have those buildings there. But just to address Scott's point as far as the Navy, and I was here when the Navy pulled out, and I can tell you, you could buy almost any place in Newport. You know, and it was amazing. But the people that came forward, the citizens that were left, the citizens that decided to stay and make a go of it, they really invested not only themselves and their ideas, but they looked at the history. Unfortunately, we took some buildings down that we shouldn't have, but all in all, you know, I think they've done a fairly good job, and we continue to have volunteers in Newport. I'm always amazed, the people that will come forward and actually say, you know, have you ever thought of this? Have you ever done that? We got a great community, we really do.
I want to encourage our listeners in the audience to move toward the microphones and open this up to questions, and really give the show over to you, because that's one of the main reasons